Welcome to another episode of 10K Hours. I'm Michael Pecchia.
I'm Justin Fields.
And today we have Aron Coleite, writer, producer. The list is long, from Heroes in 2006, The River, Hostages, Crossing Jordan, The Unknown, Proximity Effects, Star Trek Discovery, Netflix Daybreak, and the hit Netflix's Lock and Key. Aron Coleite, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's wonderful. Once again, congratulations with Lock and Key. Huge success in all age brackets, too, which was amazing of how well it was received. Our artists were super psyched about it.
Oh, yeah.
So amazing job on that. And once again, give you a little update on our show. It's the journey that you have taken to get where you are today. And once again, I see, Heroes all the way up to Lock and Key. But what got you inspired?
To
be a writer?
That's a hell of a question. What got me inspired? I knew that I wanted to write from a extremely, young age. When I was a teenager, I think I wrote my first short story when I was 14, and knew that that's basically all I wanted to do was write. I really wanted to be a comic book artist to begin with, because I would take my Spider-Man comics and kind of take tracing paper and draw Spider-Man and then show off my art to my mom and be like, look what I drew, except I was just imitating and thinking that I knew how to draw, and I had no talent whatsoever for it. When I tried to do it freehand, when I tried to push myself, I was like, I really suck at this. But what I could do is write and come up with stories. And I'm certainly a child of the 80s and watched far too much TV that I thought was brilliant TV and brilliant movies at the time. And looking back on it, it might not be so brilliant, but things like Automan and Tales of the Gold Monkey and Street Hawk and Krull, like, I devoured it.
Hey, don't knock Krull, okay? Krull was awesome.
I'm not knocking Krull. I'm just saying, I'm not sure it's as genius as I think it is.
We call it stylized.
Yeah.
Although
or
I would
preference.
take a glaive any day as my weapon of choice in a fight, because deadly frisbees, whether it's the glaive or oh god, what am I thinking of? Master the Flying Guillotine. I'm into bladed weapons.
Yeah.
And so it kind of felt like the only thing that I was suitable for was writing. It's all I wanted to do was create new stories and tell stories and use my imagination. And I have been basically pursuing it and trying to be better at it ever since.
So what was your first paid gig for writing then, if it was your passion?
My first paid gig, I believe, was writing a comic book for Top Cow called The Proximity Effect. I did some revisions on some dialogue, and then I wrote some short stories that went along with it. And I don't think I got paid that much, but it was a paycheck, and I started, getting my real first work. And this was after almost being spending a decade as a assistant on television shows. I had worked on Party of Five as an assistant, and worked on Crossing Jordan as an assistant, and had to contend with a lot of members of my family saying, okay, but what are you really going to do? You're approaching 30 now. You haven't really sold anything. You haven't really done anything. And you're not making necessarily a good living as an assistant. But I knew it was really the only thing I wanted to do. and I would just keep on working on it. And I eventually got those paid gigs for Top Cat were certainly not paying the rent. But eventually I was able to get a couple story by credits on Crossing Jordan, get a script on Crossing Jordan, get staffed by Tim Kring to be a staff writer. And from there, moving on to Heroes and kind of being able to develop a career since then.
Heroes is definitely one of my all-time favorites. I had such a great time. When that came out, I was living in Chicago, and it was like one of the last great TV shows that, you know, I would say Game of Thrones is kind of reminiscent of that, where all of your friends would be like, all right, we're going to be at your house at this time. I'm going to bring this, and this, and don't start till I get there. You know what I mean? Like, it was like that kind of a mentality. So, yeah, it was very fun. We watched, every season. It was really great. And what's funny is like, there's a couple like sci-fi shows that are happening right now, and they're starting to pull from that cast from Heroes, and you're just like, hey, you're that guy. You know what I mean? Like, I know they have a bunch of them show up on the Flash series, the CW stuff.
I saw that. I saw that this season. But looking at Heroes and bringing that up, it was the characters that you wrote weren't over the top superheroes, right? To me, it was like, the introduction of the subdued real life. This is the possibility that they could have powers if it was today, and I thought that was super impressive.
Well, that was the kind of the main thing that Tim Kring was kind of trying to present was that it could be any one of us, that any one of us could be special and could have superhuman abilities, and it would be, the question is, what would you do with it? And I think that question is something that we all ask ourselves, flight or invisibility. We all think about these things. We've all fantasized and taking that fantasy and what you could do with it. And I think the thing it was a joy for me to work on, because I was like, look, I'm the guy who still goes, when we're not in quarantine, goes to the comic book shop every Wednesday. I have for a very long time. And Tim was like, we're working on Crossing Jordan, and Crossing Jordan is not a sci-fi show. And he was like, hey, nerd, you go to the comic book store. I want to talk to you about this crazy idea that I had for this show that I want to do. And it was such a dream of a show, because no one was doing anything like it. You have to remember, the pilot was shot, I believe, in 2004. And at that moment in time, Marvel was a bankrupt company in 2004. They are not doing anything. And Heroes comes along before the age of Marvel and the rebirth of DC and any of the filmdom that we're so used to right now. And we got to tell these amazing stories that are based on all the comics that we loved growing up. And it was an incredible, one of the main reasons why I love television in specific is how collaborative the medium is and how much you can learn from being in a writer's room. And that first season Heroes writer's room was like, I felt like I was being recruited to play on the Yankees. I'm a Dodgers fan, and I'm still making the analogy that it's like being on the Yankees, because that writer's room consisted of Brian Fuller and Michael Green and Jesse Alexander and Jeff Loeb and Joe Pekaski and Natalie Chaidez. And it was just like this amazing group of talented people who all just wanted to tell these really cool stories.
Yeah,
no, that's amazing. Like, and I've never been in a writer's room, so it's great to have that collaborative feeling among coworkers. It goes far and long to, go in and have that team effort. And it's interesting you compare it to a sports team, because it has to be.
It is. I mean, me and other writers talk about this all the time, but it's the equivalent of Moneyball. And putting together a writing staff, whether you're a showrunner or you're being brought on to a staff, is everybody has a real different function in their room. And some people are better at comedy, some people are better at drama, and some people are better at genre. Some people are better on the page than in the room, but they always have stuff to add. And when you're looking to put together a group of writers, you're not looking for real people who are all the same. You're looking for a real diverse group, not only in their talents, but also in their biographies. You want to put together a group of people who have a real different background, so you can come together and create something bigger than the sum of its parts, which is exactly what television does best. It's something that is much, much larger than the sum of than any one person. It is a coming together. When I like it, what the shows that I like best and the experiences that I've had are really about, when you can come together to create something amazing.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, like, I'm very curious to hear a little bit more about, like, like the writer's room and what kind of what goes on. Like, for a lot of us, here at Sanctum, it's mostly we get a briefing and then we start drawing or sculpting or painting, and, a lot of us always have aspirations of creating our own IP and doing something like that. So it's, have you ever, like, teamed up with an artist to do stuff, or created a pitch and stuff like that? These are things that I think that everyone kind of wants to know. Is that possible? Is it a thing? And what's that like, working with an artist?
Well, I mean, I can definitely say, like, the experience of doing concept art for Daybreak in specific was an incredible process, right? Because you have all these thoughts and these ideas. You have a great director in Brad Payton. I had a great writing staff, and we're generating a lot of content. And then to be able to see it in execution of, this is what it's going to look like, this is the goal that we're trying to achieve before we go off and shoot, it's so additive to the process. Because you get to start to visualize. It's not only additive to the process of the creative process, for the writers to be able to see this, of like, oh, that's what we're talking about, that's how cool this show is going to be. But it's also really important for the larger sense of the process, which is getting the studio or network on board and making sure that they see the same show that you're seeing.
Right.
And so that is infinitely, it's such an integral part of the process, especially in doing larger sci-fi concepts and larger sci-fi shows.
Yeah.
Because so much, I will credit a dear friend and executive that I've worked with, Christiane Reed, who works for Jerry Bruckheimer, who says, you're always selling. Consistently through the process, you are always selling. There's no part where you can ever rest on your laurels, or you're just trying to be creative. You're trying to consistently sell, whether it's to your own staff to get them on board with your vision, whether it's to executives to get them on board with the vision, or it's to the audience to get them to buy into the world that you're trying to create. You are in constant sales mode, and making sure that people get on board with what you're trying to do.
Do you?
And so visuals are really important in that process. When all you have is a script, and until you start shooting, having those early designs for big sci-fi concepts are tremendously important.
I just jumping in on that. Like, once again, that was great working with you on Daybreak. Our artists were super excited of bringing that world to life, which, once again, it's such a collaborative process of, I call it fix it and prep mentality, that you answer the what, where, and why and get everybody on the same page prior to stepping on set.
Yeah. My quick question was, like, when you're always selling, right? And we kind of equate this to, like, when we set up our portfolios, like if you're applying for a job or something like that, you tend to tailor the portfolio for the person that's going to see it, right? When you guys are doing that kind of stuff, do you have to come up with different, like, material to show to execs than to show to marketing, and then to show, like, I don't see, especially in this world today with how many cooks are in the kitchen, that doing one good document, one good Bible, or one good lookbook, pitch book, is going to be enough for everybody's categories, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely knowing who your audience is, and sometimes it works. It sometimes works to know exactly who you're talking to and why.
Yeah.
And for example, there's no show, even the shows that have like Game of Thrones in its last season, which had all the money in the universe, I'm sure had money issues. And they were like, oh, it's still not enough. And they had more money than anybody to make their TV shows, right? They were making mini movies every week. And I'm sure that there was still issues. You're always the money is never enough. And so when, especially in reference to Daybreak, a lot of what we were trying to do with getting that concept art is not only building out and creating our vision for the series, but getting highly aligned with knowing who our buyer was, which was Netflix, and understanding Netflix has a lot of shows, and they're going to give us a certain amount of money to make our show, and we want to make sure that we get the right amount of money to make it. And so by presenting this world, getting them to buy into, whether it's Daybreak or Lock and Key, getting them to buy into, this is how we want to present it. And to do this, it costs this amount of money to do. That makes a difference on how your budget is structured.
Well,
interesting.
And it definitely lays it out for everyone. When you have an image with the words beside it, there isn't any guesswork. This is our vision. And once again, the biggest thing for me is it's so collaborative on the front end, right? Mm-hmm. Doing the world building, it's collaborative. It's with you, the artist, and it's back and forth. And even Brad's a big proponent of it. I've worked on other films with him in building out the worlds. But when you get to visual effects, it's make it red or green. We don't care. It's already decided. It's decided on the front end. So those times are so important, and the back and forth between the writer and artist.
Yeah,
prep is an incredibly important time, and I think it's like the more time that you can have to prep, and the more you prep well, and that means having scripts. It means making decisions. Look, you can always, change your mind, but I think it's about understanding what you are going in to shoot, so that you're not reinventing the show once you have all the footage or are on the fly. I think that can be death for a show. And it certainly makes the experience in the birthing process of making a series that much more difficult if you are waffling or don't have clear guidance or clear vision going in.
Yeah, and definitely with what we're in right now with COVID-19, right? I've been in discussions that how do you make a film shoot efficient and on time, because there's all this red tape now of getting on set. People need to be tested. It goes back to what you were just saying of answer all those questions first, get all the scripts done, and you know exactly what you're going to hit and how you're going to shoot it when you get to set, so you're efficient. So I think the benefit of this is going to push it in a direction that gets all those questions answered, so when they do hit the ground, they're efficient during this time.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So now we're jumping into Lock and Key. And I don't know, and I know some backstory. I know you did it for another, you wrote a whole pilot and other thing, and somebody else passed on it. How do you ride that feeling of like you almost have a show made at another network, and then it just goes away? And I know you wrote the episodes for it too.
Yeah. I mean, that's not only for Lock and Key. I'll say that a lot of my career feels exactly like that. You learn how to fail greater, and by failing greater, the pain is also intensified, but so is learning how to fail gracefully. It all happens, and what I'll say about it is you're a staff writer and you're writing on and you're making a show, and that's awesome, and then you sell a pilot and you think, oh my god, I'm making my own series, and then they pass on the pilot, and that really hurts because you put your all into writing that pilot and you thought this is it, and then you write a pilot and they say we're going to shoot that pilot. And you think, oh my God, this is the time. Now I've done it. I swear, this is now it's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm shooting this pilot. What an incredible experience is. And then the network passes on your pilot and you think, oh my God, how could this is a pain that I can't even fathom. How can I get up to do this again? And you get up and you do it again. And this time you not only shoot a pilot, but you have a writer's room and you develop the full season. You write almost all the scripts and you have all this massive material and you're like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. And then they pass on it again.
Oh.
And you think, how can I possibly pick myself up this time? I'm never going to make it. I'm never going to climb up the mountain. And you wake up the next morning and you realize, look, I'm making progress. I'm getting further, and understanding that process wasn't wasted, that it gave you new skills, new tools to make it better the next time. And yeah, it sucks immensely. And then you do it, you sell the pilot, you make the pilot, they pick you up for series, you write all the scripts, you make a season, and then you don't get a second season, like with Daybreak. And that hurts even more. So, I think that the process for me is, I'm not the young phenom who sold his first script, out of college, and I'm not the auteur. I'm on a long learning process of how to do what I want to do and the stories that I want to tell, and to be able to do it in a way that I can have a second season, or I can push myself further. And so, the question was like, how do you get over, the first rejection of Locke and Key? I am a cog in Locke and Key's success. I am one small part of it. Joe Hill created this comic book a decade ago,
which is amazing.
And it's an amazing comic book. It's
absolutely.
one of my favorite books. The reason why I wanted to work on it is my favorite books of all time. Joe Hill's amazing. When the first pilot they shot for that was also almost a decade ago, and it was for Fox, and Fox passed on it. And then it existed in a movie, and they did movie versions of it, and no one picked it up, and that didn't go. And then we did a version, and then I came on board. Joe wrote a version of the pilot, and they shot that for Hulu. And then I came on board to EP and showrun and write all these scripts, and then Hulu passed on it. And then Netflix picks it up based on some of the scripts that I wrote with Carlton Cuse, and then it has this new life on Netflix with Carlton Cuse and Meredith Averill running it, and I was busy doing Daybreak. So you see the origin of this, like the overnight success of Locke and Key takes 10 years longer to accomplish. It's not, it takes so long to get to that point that you start understanding failures are a part of this. The pain is a part of this process. And what is important is to digest it, take it as a learning experience, understand why things are happening, even if the reasons are stupid and inane. It is okay. That can be a part of it as well. It's just the basics of, you just have to be a little bit of the little engine that could, and you have to keep on going.
And it's having the vision for the long game, realizing it's not over when one gets rejected. I think that's the hardest thing. We have all these young artists, and they're so sensitive to a critique, or you say something about a piece of artwork and you must have it with writing that someone says they don't like it. We're like, that's just an opinion. If it's a paying job, you have to adjust it. If it's your artwork at home, you get to do whatever you want, and that's where you have your freedom.
Yeah.
But you have to look at these things as the long game. 10 years to get that made. No one would realize that it took that long when it was such a success this year. No one realized until they do the history.
No, and for, that's almost every project. Almost every project has their 10 years. There's very few projects that are that are like, oh, I wrote this overnight and I sent it in and it's genius, and it turned out to be, Parasite. It's like, I'm sure, these things take a long time, and it takes a lot of criticism. And yes, you have to toughen your shell and toughen your skin to get critiqued and to understand that it's part of the process. And for me, it has been that learning process. For me, it has been understanding that creating art is all about iteration. And when I was young, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that when you finish a draft and it took so long to write that script. It was so hard to write that script, and you pour your heart into every single word, and you think, I'm done, I did it. And it takes a long time to realize, no, the work is really just beginning. And the thing that I like to do on my shows, on my work, is to consistently understand that it is an iterative process. It can always be better. You can always make things better. It only has to stop when they pull it away from you, when you have to shoot it. And then when you're shooting it, I'm still iterating on it and still rewriting and still pushing the actors. How can we say this better? How can we do this line differently? Can we get some alts? And then you're in post and you think, oh, I'm still iterating. Like, how can I tell the story better now? You have all these opportunities to continue to tell the story and be better at telling the story. And you have all these weapons in your arsenal, especially when you're in post. You can, editorial, you have all these ways of telling the story better. You have ADR, you can take lines from other places. You have all these weapons at your arsenal. It's not just you sitting at the computer writing these words. And only when it's on Netflix, only when it is aired, are you allowed to stop working on it. And then sometimes for me in my insanity, I'm like, oh shit, I should have done that. There are still, and going back to even some of my comic book work, there are still comic books that I think about like, oh, that would have fixed it. I should have thought about that at the time, and now it's published, and I can't go back, but I would.
Yeah. True artist. No, so with all that hustle and bustle of you've been a showrunner, you're writing. How do you find balance, and how do you correct yourself when you feel out of sync?
I don't find balance. I'm working on that. I would say, the life on a show in specific is very exhausting and very trying. It is a marathon, and whether you're on set, whether you're in post, whether you're in the room, and sometimes you're doing it all at the same time. There was a day, I can tell you, there was a week on set where I'm living in Albuquerque. I'm away from my family. We have 2 units prepping. We have 2 units shooting. I have to give notes on a cut, and I'm still writing the last episode. And at that time, and I'm still trying to be a father and a husband. So it is impossible. It's impossible to do all that. One way you're able to do it is collaborating, is having really amazing partners. I had an amazing writing staff with people like Emily Fox and Jen Cow. I have an amazing producer in Jeff Fearson and Brad Payton. You rely on these people so that you can find balance. You rely on other people. It's only through having human connections that we can actually make these things and collaborate. Also, to that end, you are stretched so thin. My weight yo-yos consistently based on where I am in the process, because and this is all changed in COVID-19 and after, because there won't be just a buffet set up, but it's like, when I'm on set, the first day of set, it's like, I'm going to eat fine. I'm going to eat well. It's all almonds. I'm not going to snack. And then by day 2, you're already like, hey, those donuts look amazing. And I need to eat the whole box for my own sanity.
Yeah.
So you don't find balance. The balance is kind of understanding the ebbs and flows of the work. Like right now, I'm just doing development. I'm writing a couple pilots. I'm writing some movies. I'm doing a lot of development. It's very busy, but I'm also able to spend this time with my family, reconnect with my own passions and what I want to talk about and what I want to do right now. And I'm able to take care of myself center myself for my family, center myself as a writer. But I know that that's a temporary time. I know it's going to go out the window when I'm back in a room, when I'm back on set. I struggle to find that. What do I do to center myself and to really, is to take deep breaths and understand, it's all part of the process. Sometimes going for a run, going for a walk, going for an exercise, having conversations, really taking the time to understand that it's also, the stakes can feel like they're tremendous and they're really high, but at the end of the day, we're doing creative work. It's the best job in the world. We're making television, we're making movies, we're creating these fantasy worlds. And so this is the dream. And I've reached this point where I get to do this. And so, yeah, it might be hard, but it's not impossible. And taking a deep breath and taking a step back and then attacking the problem, every problem can be solved. Every problem can be solved on set. Every problem can be solved at home. Every problem can be solved. You just need to have the fortitude to kind of understand, like, I don't have the solution right now, but give me a day, give me an hour, I'll have one.
Yeah, that's amazing, and thanks you for explaining that. It's the artists sometimes lose hope because they don't realize how hard you have to work, and you're saying you're never taking your foot really off the gas, right? You're going and going. How many projects do you work on at once?
It depends. I could say currently, and they're in various states, I am working on 12 projects right now. And they're in various states of, some are just 12.
Just 12. No big deal.
And that's, and look, that is a really high number even for me.
Yeah.
Part of it is definitely quarantine related. I want to keep on contributing. I want to do as much as I can in this time period while I'm at home, and I can be as creative as I want to be right now. When I was doing Daybreak and Lock and Key, and I'm doing revisions on a movie for Brad and Jeff, at that time, that's 3 projects, and one of them is plenty. At my minimum, I like 2 or 3 at a time. I like being able to kind of adjust my mental thinking on, like, okay, I can't solve a problem over here, but I can solve it over here. And sometimes that is even on a single project, especially when you're on a show, you're doing 10 episodes or 13 episodes. All those episodes need to be amazing. So even then, when I think about, 12 projects, doing 13 episodes, doing 10 episodes is like doing 10 projects. Each episode, even though it's a singular show, those individual episodes need that care and attention that you would pay to any single project. It needs its identity, and you need to pay deep attention to each one of those hours of television. So the notion of me doing 12 right now, it seems large, but it putting it in perspective, it's just this, for me, it's very, very similar to thinking of how to do a single season.
No, I'm overwhelmed just here.
My instant reaction is like, I'm not doing enough.
That's my goal. My goal is to make you guys feel as lazy and overwhelmed as possible.
Well, you've succeeded, sir.
And then look, some of these projects become nothing, and some of them become something.
Yeah.
But it's about keeping. I think that's part of the fun of being able to dream. Is, look, sometimes you work on a project and it's like, it goes and it's great, and sometimes you write a pilot or you try to sell a pilot, doesn't sell. It doesn't mean it wasn't worth the time. It means it was a worthwhile effort, and sometimes you put it in your back pocket and revisit it later. Yeah. But it's all about kind of, for me, at this moment in time when I have these projects, it's about, how do I stretch myself creatively? What do I want to do next? What do I want? I love the careers of people like Danny Boyle, who never let a genre confine him. And there are certain things that I love it all. I love horror. I love sci-fi. I love crime dramas. I love family dramas and coming of age stories. I don't want anybody to be able to tell me, this is what you do. This is your box and you should stay in it. I want to be able to do it all. So I don't, so to do that, you need to push yourself consistently so that nobody is looking at you as if you can do, you're a one-trick pony and this is all you can do. I want to consistently be pushing myself to be better and to do more.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. And talking to directors, the same thing of, they don't want to lock themselves in. I was talking to David Dobkin, and Wedding Crashers. He could do Wedding Crashers all the time, but he's like, he wants to push himself. It's interesting, but what do you do when you are, jumping between different stories? Do you have to go for a walk to clear your mind, so then when you start something new, you get in sync with it? What is that like when you're jumping between, you're like writing different stories and ideas?
Sometimes it's taking a walk. Sometimes it's also it's creating the balance in your work that is understanding what is the most pressing thing to do at this moment right now. What is, what is demanding your attention? Who is the child that is screaming for attention at this moment in time? And sometimes that's dictated by deadlines. And sometimes that's dictated by, like what is creatively calling out to you in this moment. So, so I will, I had a deadline last week. I had to turn an outline to a studio and I know that is the pressing thing. The outline went into the studio, and now I know I have this time where they're reading, they're coming up with their notes. And so I can focus on something else. And I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to focus on this movie that I'm working on until I get their notes, in which case then their notes become the most important thing. So it is 100% about looking at your, there's my friend Jesse Alexander, who is an amazing writer. I take a lot of inspiration from him. He was like, you need to read the Stoics. You need to read Marcus Aurelius. You need to really get into understanding, how to attack your day. And one of the things I do at the beginning of the week is I write a list of everything that I need to accomplish in the course of this week, and things that I want to accomplish in the course of this week. And that goes from everything from projects to emails to connecting with friends to movies I want to watch. I kind of write this whole list on a Sunday. Even so I'm not looking at each day of like, well, what am I going to do today? What am I going to do today? I have meetings, I have my calendar, but I have a whole list, so I can feel comfortable going into the week going, I have my list. And I know I know what's at the top of the list, and I know what's at the bottom of the list. And I know every week I'm not going to finish this list, but I can tick off things. And I can look at the list. I can keep on going back to this page that I have in my journal so that I know, okay, I'm not thinking about this day to day. I'm not thinking about this minute to minute as I go through my week of what do I do next? What do I do next? I am attacking everything of like really segmented and understanding this is what I want to work on this week. It's this movie, it's this TV show, and the other stuff, that's next week's problem.
Yeah, it kind of goes with that saying, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. Yeah. And you just carry it over.
You just carry it over.
There is something that's really good about checking things off your list, too. Mm-hmm. It's very therapeutic.
No, it's totally therapeutic. Yeah. And it's like, and the other thing is like, who needs your attention when, because some things are like you were saying before, Michael, it's like, look, sometimes you have a paycheck and
you got to earn that
paycheck. You need to do right now. That you have people breathing down your neck. You need to finish that. Sometimes it's, look, I'm writing a movie on spec, and that will come when it comes. And sometimes I'll be, working out and having a thought about it, and sometimes I'll be on a walk, and I'll want to work on that at night. It changes based on what the week looks like.
So when you're, like you just said that, what do you do when you have an idea and you're out for a walk? Do you have like a tape recorder and talk into it, or do you?
No, I use the notes function on I use Apple Notes, or I can't remember. It's just called Notes.
Notes. That's right.
And I have a different notes file for every project I'm working on, and then I have what I call the big sexy file, and the big sexy file is where all the ideas go, and it's just the ideas of like, if I see a video that I like, if I see a book that I like, if I'm listening to a podcast and they make a reference to a story, I'll just keep a list of, these are my inspirations, these are things that I want to go back to. But usually when I'm out and about and I just like, oh, I had this thought, I'm just going to jot it down in these notes. When I'm walking, I'm not really good at that dictation. Like I hear people who do that. I would love to be able to do that, but I also hate the sound of my own voice, and so I don't like talking out loud. And sometimes I go back and look at my notes and I'm like, I don't even know what I was thinking of, right? Like I can't even understand, this note is unintelligible. I have no idea what I was thinking of. And so if it's really relevant, the thought will come back to me. If it's not relevant, it'll flutter off into the
way of checking it off too is that if it had any value, it would stick. If not, it wasn't that important, and you move on.
It probably wasn't the cure for cancer that I came up with that I lost, like Sean Connery in Medicine Man. It's probably not that. It probably was not that good of an idea.
Yeah.
I mean, looking down your path, what do you have on the horizons? Are you in a second season for Locke and Key?
So Locke and Key, Meredith Averill and Carlton Cuse are running that, and doing a great job with it. I'm such a huge fan of the show, but I'm working on my other stuff now.
Got it.
And that includes several pilots and several movies, some animated series,
Ooh, exciting.
comic books.
Nice.
I'm using this moment in time to really expand myself.
It's amazing. There's been a lot of dialogue about with what people have been doing with their time during this. I don't want to say downtime because we're in the office, right? We're playing it safe. You're on Zoom because respect to wanting to be home, but really you set that structure to still be creative and use the time wisely. Has it inspired you to try to alter your life? Because as soon as it opens, are you going to go 150 miles an hour, or do you pull it back a little bit to keep what you have going on now?
I still feel like I'm going 150 miles an hour. I don't feel like quarantine has slowed me down. I feel like if it's done anything, it's inspired me to push harder, and understand, how rare this time is, how time it goes so quickly, and what do you want your lasting impact to be, and how do you want to use your creativity and your career, and what do you want to do with your life, and how it can so easily be taken away. And what I want to do is I want to try to forge my own creative destiny as much as I possibly can. And so I have, this has not slowed down. And if anything, it's actually pushed me to push myself even further, see how much I can take on, see how much I can develop my own voice, keep on developing my own voice, because I still feel like I am in process. I do not feel like I have reached any kind of mastery of this. I feel like this is a career in progress. This is a life in progress that I am still attempting to get better at.
How did you get that work ethic, and who inspired you? Because you're pushing yourself, but did you discover that, or did someone teach you that?
I had a lot of really some pretty amazing mentors. I think, if I look back on it, my stepfather is a man named Uri Hersher, and he founded the Skirball Cultural Center in Los Angeles. And he came into my life when I was 12 years old, and what he was doing, what I saw him accomplish, of building a cultural institution, building a museum, building something that could have a mark on this city, was incredible. And I think having him serve as inspiration of of a relentless drive of what you could accomplish, that you could accomplish anything you really set your mind to, was very formative for me. And so even knowing, you know, that getting into this industry and getting into this business would be fraught, that it's so difficult to make it, and that it took me, that it wasn't there's that my overnight success, you know, took 25 years to get to this place.
Yeah.
You know, that it took, that if I have any success, it is still a work in progress for me. Came from the idea of, you know, there is no resting on your laurels. There is never, it's never enough. And knowing like, this is the only thing I want to do. This is what my passion is. My passion is storytelling. And if I want to do it, it has to be my focus. So any of the rejection that I got couldn't serve to put me down. And by the way, like I have had so much rejection. Everybody has a lot of rejection. I include myself in, you know, I applied for my college creative. I want to be a creative writing major in college, and I got rejected. And then I applied to grad school to get an MFA in playwriting, and I got rejected. And and then, you know, I tried to get agents and I got rejected. And I tried to get staffed and I got rejected. And one of my best rejection letters is I sent some writing samples to Marvel, because Marvel used to have an open policy. I'm not sure if they do anymore, but Marvel used to have an open policy where you could send them your writing samples to get gigs. And I got a rejection letter back that said, you know, thank you for your writing samples. And on that rejection letter, it's Spider-Man. I mean, it's basically the Steve Ditko Spider-Man that I was tracing when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Basically saying, no, we don't want you. So you even get rejected by Spider-Man. Spider-Man's like, we don't want you to write. And it's taking all of that rejection and understanding, look, my writing is not good enough right now. I can't break through. I have to keep on working on it. I have to really understand why this is happening, and how to make myself better. And understanding that this is a long game. This is a long haul to get to a place where you can feel like you have some semblance of craft. But I also believe anybody can do it. I believe that if you work hard enough, you can break through. Sometimes it takes a long time to do it.
You just gotta keep
sometimes
pushing.
it takes forever.
Did you keep the letter?
What's that?
Did you keep the letter?
Did I keep the letter? Oh, of course, absolutely.
You know, a lot of creatives I know, they always save the rejection letter. Todd
Fuel.
McFarlane, Jim Lee, they almost put them up on the wall as signs of you're getting closer, right? It's not. It's you know, I always like to think of it's failing as failing upwards. You know what I mean? Like, you learn that lesson. Now take what you've learned and keep going. You know, kind of a thing.
And adding to that, it's not failure. It's those experiences you take from that failure that move you forward.
Yeah.
So it's really not a failure. I mean, you've got battle scars that you've just plowed through and didn't let that stop you, which is, I think all the artists, when they listen to this, realize you planted that seed and protected it and let it grow. Just keep on pushing.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's such an interesting thing, but I don't like when people say the words, this is my gut instinct. I don't like the term gut instinct, because we're all talking about the same thing, but what you're really talking about when you talk about gut instinct is you're talking about the battle scars and the years and years of experiences that you have that lead you to make this choice and to feel this way about a project. And so when you say gut instinct, you're diminishing your own emotions, you're diminishing your own thoughts and diminishing your own feelings by saying it comes from your gut. It doesn't come from your gut. Your gut is a lifetime of experiences, of rejections, of failures, of trying harder, of successes, that are leading you to make this choice in this moment. And so, you know, it's like I prefer, you know, and I also, like, I have the gut instinct to say, like, look, my gut is telling me this. But what you really are saying is look, my experience, my lifetime, my biography of experience is telling me this is how to feel about this project. I might be wrong, but this is what my experience is leading me to do at this moment in time. And I think that is completely based on all those life experiences that lead to being right here in this moment in time.
Yeah, I hope everybody heard that.
Yeah.
Never give up. Take those failures as experiences. And we are coming to the end of our podcast. So, Aron, did you want to add anything? Any last thing? Or, you know, your words of wisdom have been huge today. I mean,
I've got like two big questions I've got to ask.
Roll.
We go.
Roll. We got
one,
the time. We got the time.
One, what was the film that inspired you the most? And also, if you had to give our audience, you know, 2 or 3 of your favorite comic books of all time. I know this is a very loaded
that's a
question.
deep one coming from a comic guy.
Where does that lie? Where does that lie?
Good questions.
The first is easy. The second is a lot harder.
Sorry.
No worries. The first is easy. I mean, for me, the most perfect movie is Jaws.
Spielberg
it's
at
the
his
first
finest.
blockbuster. It's the first 4-quadrant film. It blends horror and humor. I mean, that movie is so funny and so scary and so emotional and heartfelt. And that you can, it's a movie for me that shows you, like, you can paint with all the colors of the rainbow. You have a whole palette, and you don't have to be narrowly confined to just being a horror film or just being an action adventure or just being a family drama. You can be all these, or a social critique.
Right.
It's perfect in that fashion. It is all things all at once, and yet seamlessly fits together. It's just brilliant. And so a lot of what I try to do always goes back to Jaws.
I love that movie because of all of those things as well, but even the making of was so full of problems and issues. And, you know, like, I remember watching a documentary where you know, Spielberg mentioned, he was just like, you know, like, halfway through, like, I didn't think they were gonna take it away from me at any moment. You know, like the shark sinking or not working, or, you know, all these other things, and the creative ideas that he came up with. You know, I'm sure that there was others involved as well, you know, but to roll with those punches and still come out with something that, you know, I think that was actually termed, was that the first blockbuster, the first summer blockbuster in history? Yeah.
Yeah.
They like that. People certainly equate it as the first summer blockbuster.
Yeah, it has that as a moniker, I think. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it was just an absolute, you know, interesting story to find out how that was made. Yeah.
All I know is it scared the shit out of me, and I don't want to go back in the water.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It
still does.
Yes. Yeah. I don't want to swim in the ocean. I really don't. Because of that movie. So yeah, great. Thanks.
And now the other question.
And now, now the hardest question.
I'm not letting you off the hook with that one.
No.
No, don't let. I would not. Oh my God. I mean, it changes all the time. I mean, like, right now I'm into reading a lot of Junji Ito manga horror. Before that, Tom King's run on Mr. Miracle was incredible. You're kind of it's kind of always, you know, going around. I can say, you know, I don't want to say Watchmen. That's fucking boring as shit.
Oh, it's still a good one though. It's such a good one.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's
obviously and very relevant right now. Very relevant.
It's amazing, and it's really relevant. Here's what I'll say, which is a book that I can constantly go back to, and I would say is actually one of the more inspirational books in my life. There was an X-Men graphic novel called God Loves, Man Kills. which was a one-shot graphic novel that they did. Chris Claremont wrote it.
I was just gonna say Chris Claremont had some of the best stories in Uncanny X-Men.
So amazing.
Yeah, my favorite time.
And I'll tell you the reason why it stuck to me, and it was one of the first X-Men books that I got.
Yeah.
And the reason why it stuck to me was reading that book made me feel, even as a child, feel smart. It made me understand, oh, mutants are an allegory for the oppressed and the other. And that's what this is talking about. This is talking about racism, and this is talking about anti-Semitism. And they're using mutants as this allegory to tell this really important story. And it made me feel so much like a much deeper connection to the material, and it made me feel smart without bashing it over my head.
Right.
And that moment for me was like, oh, this is where I understood, oh, I understand what the Twilight Zone's about now. I understand what sci-fi is about now. It kind of opened my mind to understanding what all these things that I loved before are actually attempting to do. And so, for me, that was always a North Star of, you have to make your audience feel like they are getting something that no one else is getting, that they're seeing something in the material that no one else sees, and that you're speaking directly to them. Because that's what Chris Claremont did to me in God Loves, Man Kills. And it's certainly still, especially right now, especially with our Black Lives Matters protests going on, is incredibly relevant, incredibly timely, and just extremely evocative.
It's one of the best runs ever, for sure. And I think that's all the questions we got for today. Yeah,
Aaron,
I mean, we could talk comics.
We could talk
I think
for hours. I know.
Yeah.
We could talk for hours.
We got to have you come in when all this is
when
over.
We're cleared up.
Nerd out. Yeah.
I would love to. Nothing would make me happier.
Thank you for taking the time out of your 12 project writing day and fit us in for an hour. We really do appreciate that. Say hi to the family.
I will, and to yours as well.
Thank you. Yeah. Till
next
meet
time.
Again. Yeah, when we can actually be outside and not do a chicken wing.
Yeah.
So have a great day.
It's amazing. I keep on, every time I watch something, I'm like, oh, remember when people used to hug and shake hands? Remember when that used to be a thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And hang out with each other? What a different time that was.
Yeah.
It's going to be weird describing this to younger kids.
Oh, yeah.
Like, hey, remember that time? No, they're not going to remember it at all.
No, the kids are old enough now. The older ones are going to remember it.
Yeah.
So, and thank you, and we are out.
All right, thanks.